What's up? In this video, we're doing a deep dive for Season 1, Episode 6 of House of the Dragon, titled The Princess and the Queen. We did breakdowns for the first 5 episodes already. We got links in the description, so check those out if you haven't already. No time to waste, let's get going. In this video, we'll cover 2 main storylines from this episode, the drama in King's Landing and Daemon's storyline out in Pentos. Let's start with what's going down in King's Landing. We've now had a 10-year time jump, so both Rhaenyra and Alicent are around 27, 28 years old. At this point, Alicent has 3 kids, her son Aegon, who is the oldest, her middle child Aemon, and her youngest daughter Helaena. Rhaenyra already has 2 sons, Jacaerys and Lucerys, and Jacaerys is the oldest and the heir. And this episode actually opens up with her giving birth to her 3rd son. It's a brutal endeavor, but she succeeds, and Laenor, who wasn't even in the same room as the birth, comes in after the birth is over. Anyways, right as the boy is born, Queen Alicent requests to see the child. Absolutely grimy bitch move by Alicent. She's so fucking hateable to me, man. Despite being in no shape to be walking around, Rhaenyra is a gangster and decides to bring the boy to Alicent herself. She's joined by Laenor, and it's an absolute spectacle in the castle. Now, why does Alicent insist on seeing the child? Well, there's a growing rumor throughout the castle that none of Rhaenyra's children are actually Laenor's. Both the Targaryens and Valyrians have blonde hair, and it's very odd that the children are all brown-haired. Alicent wants a first glimpse at this newborn to see whether it's got any of Laenor's traits.
This episode always stands out to me because it's when they go into the time jump format. These can be tricky as hell. House of Dragon kills it in my opinion because they use it as a means of further character building. We saw Rhaenyra's stubbornness back then, and now we see what it's evolved into. She's tough as hell and is not trying to let Alicent gain any sort of upper hand here, fair enough. Childbirth is normally associated with peril and the sole responsibility of women in King's Landing. Think back to what happened to Rhaenyra's own mother. So she's also subverting that too, since she needs to hone a certain image to keep her grip on the title of heir in the minds of everybody but her father. It isn't as humiliating as Cersei's walk of shame through King's Landing, but it's a huge moment of pain in a similar way. The relationship between her and Alicent is clearly...
What a blessing this is for you.
Frosty. Let's just say, for her to even make this request in the first place. Low-key moment to note here, this Caswell dude is angling for something.
So Laenor walks with Rhaenyra to let Alicent see the baby, and along the way manages to piss Rhaenyra off even more by comparing childbirth to taking a lance in the shoulder.
I took a lance through the shoulder once.
My deepest sympathies.
They arrive at Alicent's quarters, and you can see the palpable hatred between Rhaenyra and Alicent. Viserys is still somehow alive and is ecstatic at the birth of his new grandson. He clearly still loves Rhaenyra very much and is proud of her. When prompted for the name of the child, Laenor jumps in and says it's Joffrey, which we all know is named after his dead male lover. Alicent holds the baby and notices the early signs of brown hair. Once again, the child bears no resemblance to Laenor.
Like you hinted at, Chen, there's a power struggle here with Rhaenyra, even refusing the pillow for rest at the start of the exchange.
There's no need.
We get some insight into how much power Viserys has held on to because he looks like the Crypt Keeper. And there's no way this request from Alicent wouldn't have been quashed off the bat back in the day.
Rhaenyra and Laenor then walk back to their side of the castle, and Rhaenyra is pissed at Laenor for jumping the gun and naming the child. He's been doing his thing this entire time, so he doesn't deserve the privilege of naming the kid since he's been pretty absent from all the parenting stuff. They return to the castle, and both Jacaerys and Lucerys are super excited to meet their newest sibling. They've already chosen a dragon egg for their brother. We also see Lord Harwin Strong present in the room. He's now the commander of the City Watch, and he holds baby Joffrey with pride. Laenor then escorts Jace and Luke out of the room, so we know the deal. Harwin is clearly the biological father of all 3 boys. Laenor has to act like their father in public, but the truth is quite obvious.
Very delicate arrangement. The fact that the biological dad is on the scene but is basically only seen as a close friend of their mom's is the kind of thing that usually ends up in a therapy session. When you think about it, it makes sense that Harwin would become the dude Rhaenyra fell for on the side. Hell of a fighter, obviously shows a liking for Rhaenyra earlier, and constantly looks like he's up to no good. He's like a blend of Cole and Daemon, but less whiny and a little less sadistic.
We then cut to the Dragonpit, where we see the sons from both Rhaenyra and Alicent's side present. As the oldest of the 4 boys, Aegon is the ringleader. Young Jacaerys is getting lessons with his dragon Vermax, and he gets to command Vermax to melt a poor sheep with the Dracarys command. Out of the 4 boys, Aemon is the only one without a dragon since his egg never hatched. Led by Aegon, the three boys play a mean prank on Aemon. They tell him that they found a random dragon in the Dragonpit, but it turns out to be a pig that they dressed up as a dragon. This is exactly the type of prank that creates future school shooters.
He seems like a kid that's got a whole lot of demons. Jace and Luke look like a Disney Channel duo and sort of act like them too. Like if this is 2010, they'd each have a cameo appearance on either Sweet Life of Zack and Cody or Wizards of Waverly Place. This checks out because they do have some obvious privilege as the next in line from the heir. Aegon comes off like a secondary Harry Potter villain.
Be sure to mount her carefully. First flight's always rough.
Sort of looks like Malfoy and the kid from Stranger Things if they were combined.
Aemon wanders deeper into the pit by himself and almost gets butchered by a monstrous dragon that's just hanging there.
Him sprinting away from Dreamfire reminds me a lot of when Kevin McAllister runs away from the furnace in Home Alone.
Alicent hears about the prank on Aemon and goes to Viserys to complain about Jace and Luke, but Viserys isn't dumb and says that Aegon was most likely the one who came up with the plan. She also complains about Rhaenyra's sons clearly not being Laenor's children. Viserys knows the truth but doesn't care, and he tells Alicent that she needs to let this shit go or else it's going to result in serious consequences.
The look on her face during the Helena conversation basically says, damn, my kid might be a little strange. Alicent's judgment toward her own kids and hatred for Rhaenyra's is pretty obnoxious at this point. Clearly she's let that hate eat away at her over the years, but it is good to see Viserys show some backbone.
Also important to mention that bitch-ass Criston Cole is now serving Alicent, and she complains about Rhaenyra to him, and he eagerly talks shit about Rhaenyra as well.
This is the episode where he enters bottom 5 Thrones and House of Dragon characters of all time. Over the course of the time jump, Cole has seemingly dedicated his life to trying to subvert Rhaenyra's chances at becoming the heir. Look at this petty little shithead.
Alicent then goes to see Aegon while he's in the middle of jerking off from his window. It's a type of perverted display that really shows that this man isn't leadership material. Or maybe it actually means that he is. Either way, Alicent scolds him for the pig prank on Aemon and tells him that he must protect his brother and stick up for family. She gives Aegon the same speech Otto gave her over a decade ago. When Rhaenyra comes into power, Aegon's life will be in danger. Aegon says he doesn't want to be king, and this sets Alicent off completely. This chick is fucking nuts, man. She violently grabs Aegon's face and reminds him that what he wants doesn't matter. As long as he's alive, he is a challenge to Rhaenyra's claim.
Part of it comes off as loving, and the other part of it comes off as her just going up to her kid and saying, nah man, like, we're gonna win this. This is where the sexism truly rears its head, because are we really gonna try to say the dude pulling a Jenny from Forrest Gump while publicly is a better prospect to lead the realm than Rhaenyra? This is one of the first times where it feels like Rhaenyra's claim is most definitely going to be opposed by Alicent's shit-eating brigade. Her mind is made up, and she even has an idea of how it's going to go down. We don't have any update on Otto yet, but no one's mentioned him dying either, so he's most definitely still a factor.
So all this drama bubbles over during a training session. Criston Cole is training the boys while Viserys and Lionel are watching from above. Viserys is so proud of all of his grandsons learning together, but it's obviously about to be a shit show. Cole favors Alicent's boys and gives them more instruction. Harwin is watching and makes a comment about Criston neglecting Rhaenyra's boys. This prompts Cole to set up a 1v1 between Aegon and Jace. The mismatch is severe as Aegon is still older than Jace. When you're that young, a few years makes a massive difference in size and strength.
It's the 13-year-old who's already hit puberty hurling inside fastballs at the 3rd grader who made the team because he's good at hustling, and his dad might be the assistant coach.
Yeah, I was never one of those kids, unfortunately. Jace fights well, though, and has Aegon on the ropes at first, and Aegon has to cheat a little bit in order not to lose. Aegon then comes back in round 2 with a vengeance and knocks Jace to the ground. He's about to smash Jace's face in before Harwin comes in and intervenes. Cole is such a piece of shit just letting that happen, but he knows exactly how to push Harwin's buttons, and he hints that Harwin could only care about Jace and Luke to this extent if they were potentially his sons. This leads Harwin to lose his mind and beat up Cole, and now he's made an embarrassment of himself in public, and he's all but confirmed that he's indeed the real father. Word will soon spread throughout the castle, and the rumors will grow even louder. Lionel Strong chews Harwin out for losing his cool and putting their entire family in danger. The truth is obvious, and the only thing protecting them is Viserys being super biased. Rhaenyra overhears this entire conversation and realizes that her family is now in danger.
Pretty much the closest House of Dragon gets to the Morty show. Harwin goes too far, you can't blame him, but he goes too far. Yeah, it was satisfying to watch him beat the piss out of Cole, but when you have illegitimate sons connected to a royal line, you surrender certain rights and public declarations that you're allowed to make within the walls of King's Landing.
Now, let's quickly talk more about Rhaenyra and Laenor's dynamic a bit more. Laenor's found a new boy toy, a knight named Sir Carl. Trouble has been erupting in the Stepstones again, and Sir Carl has been in some of the fights. Laenor longs for battle once again and is feeling restless at King's Landing, so he asks Rhaenyra if he can leave to fight.
Rumbling in, just tossing down some ale with your side piece, then immediately asking to be able to go to war while your wife has been recovering post-birth is a bold move with absolutely no finesse.
Yeah, Laenor just has no idea how much he's been pissing Rhaenyra off, and she's furious at him for many valid reasons. The biggest thing to her is that Laenor has been unable to conceive with her. Look, we know he's into guys, so it's obviously unfair to expect him to be able to get Rhaenyra pregnant, but from Rhaenyra's point of view, all Laenor had to do was successfully get her pregnant a few times, and all of these questions about their son's parentage wouldn't exist. The boys would biologically be Laenor's, and their family would be much safer. They really needed sperm banks back then. Rhaenyra is also mad because Laenor has been a very absent father all these years. Yes, he's not technically their father, but he's supposed to play that role to the public, and instead he's just been partying and fucking around. A deal is a deal, so Rhaenyra allowed him to do this over the past decade, but now things are dicey and Rhaenyra commands him to remain at King's Landing and not run off into the Stepstones.
He's got a ton of stuff working against him, but he really hasn't held up his end of the royal bargain. He severely underestimated the sacrifices this was going to entail.
Sensing the danger, Rhaenyra makes an offer to Alicent during a small council meeting. Side note, these meetings are just a cold war between Alicent and Rhaenyra. Also, Lord Beesbury is still in the council, but he's getting really up there in age and is starting to slip a little bit. Anyways, Rhaenyra offers to wed her oldest son Jace to Alicent's daughter Helaena. Also, if Rhaenyra's dragon Syrax lays another clutch of eggs, Aemon will get his first pick. Viserys is delighted at this offer, but Alicent isn't interested. She tells Viserys later on that the offer is clearly one given out of desperation. She also refuses to wed Helaena to any of Rhaenyra's sons, since Alicent knows that they are bastards. Viserys insists that Alicent accept the offer and unite the houses, but Alicent is steadfast in her refusal.
Earlier in the meeting, Rhaenyra makes some solid points about why the hell they never fortified the Stepstones. Alicent openly criticizes Rhaenyra at most points in the conversation. She doesn't seem to have any interest in reconciliation or moving on any topic.
Lyonel Strong then pulls up and asks to resign his hand. He's ashamed of his son's outburst at the training grounds. Viserys says that Harwin was expelled as commander of the City Watch, so that's punishment enough. He doesn't understand why Lyonel wants to resign, since he's been a great hand for him.
For sure, his loyalty and advice have been top tier since day one. This veiled shot at Otto during the exchange doesn't go unnoticed.
I'm marked by self-interest, which stands in contrast to all others.
Lyonel's reasoning to Viserys is that there's a shadow over his house, but when Viserys presses him on a clear explanation, Lyonel refuses to say. Since he can't be truthful to Viserys, Viserys says that he must stay as his hand. Lyonel agrees, but his one request is to escort Harwin back home to his family's seat at Harrenhal, since Harwin is Lyonel's heir and will someday be Lord of Harren's castle. Viserys gives him permission to do so, and this pisses Alicent off since she knows that Rhaenyra is now going to get away with all this shit. She has her routine dinner with Larys Strong, and she tells Larys about his father's resignation attempt, which is a clear giveaway that Harwin is indeed guilty of fathering Rhaenyra's children.
Striking bit of irony here when Larys mentions how Viserys is purposely ignorant as to what Rhaenyra's been up to, and hints that Alicent would do the same for a kid that she cared for, but then she's incredibly dismissive of that. In reality, Aegon has been setting up his own brother, sleeping with maids, being a bit of a pervert, and more throughout the episode.
Alicent mentions to Larys that Lyonel will now escort Harwin back to Harrenhal, and then come back to keep being the Hand. This is where we see how much of an evil snake weasel bastard that Larys is. Alicent complains that no one at King's Landing will take her side, and this prompts Larys to hatch his own sinister plan. He goes down to the dungeons and finds 3 criminals who are on death row. He makes them an offer. In exchange for keeping their lives, they must do something for Larys. And in order to prevent them from talking, they must agree to have their tongues cut out. Jesus fucking Christ, dude. We then see Harwin say goodbye to Jace, Luke, and Rhaenyra. As he leaves, Jace asks Rhaenyra if Harwin is his father. Rhaenyra's answer pretty much confirms the young boy's suspicions. There's far too much smoke now in King's Landing, so Rhaenyra decides it's time to leave. She tells Laenor that they gotta get out of here and post up at Dragonstone. Rhaenyra initially stayed to make sure that Alicent didn't manipulate Viserys, but ultimately she admits that it was a mistake and she should have went to Dragonstone years ago. She does tell Laenor to bring Sir Carl with him, and this makes them both very happy. Meanwhile, Lionel and Harwin have now arrived at Harrenhal and they're sleeping when tragedy strikes. The criminals that are working for Larys ended up locking the doors and setting fire to the castle at night, and both Lionel and Harwin are burned alive. This fucker Larys killed his own father and older brother. Alicent finds out about the fire and she knows that Larys killed them both. She's appalled at what he's done and she says that she never ordered that. She's right, but Larys took matters into his own hands and has basically forced Alicent to be tied to him now. If Alicent tries to distance herself from him, Larys can lie and say that she gave the order to kill Harwin and Lionel. Plus, I also think Alicent is now terrified of Larys and what he's capable of.
Keep in mind as you watch Larys in this scene that he is not the firstborn son, is clearly not a breadwinner in terms of tournaments or any kind of combat due to his disability. So when he talks about his family with this almost quiet disdain, it feels like somebody talking about their rival rather than somebody that you love and care for. Alicent makes a comment about how she wishes her father was back at his job. She's basically accepted a bribe from the mob at this point.
Alright, now it's time to check in on what Daemon has been up to. In the last 10 years, he's married Laena Velaryon and has 2 daughters with her. They're actually twins named Baela and Rhaena, and Laena is actually pregnant with a 3rd child as well. They've been living away from home and are currently staying in Pentos, one of the free cities.
I love how this plotline opens up with Daemon and Laena doing like B-52 flyovers and monster truck moves with their dragons, and everyone in Pentos is just like...
Life at Pentos has been easy, maybe too easy. Prince Regios of Pentos offers Daemon a permanent residence there. The whole family will get a castle, farmland, and vineyards, they'd have tenants who pay tribute, and they'd enjoy many other privileges. In exchange, Regios wants Targaryen protection of the city. The Triarchy has been slowly rising again, and Pentos could be under threat. Daemon and Laena provide dragons, which should deter any potential invasion. Laena isn't interested in the offer and wants to return to her home in Driftmark. Daemon thinks it's a good deal. He's tired of political scheming, and in Pentos, the deal would be strictly transactional and straightforward. Laena thinks that Daemon has lost his edge, his ambition. She wants to raise her children in Driftmark, but Daemon seems uninterested.
He knows it's a slam dunk. He's also the Triarchy's kryptonite, which means he can flex his muscle a bit without taking real risk during combat. It's essentially a cushy day job with limited hours and a healthy salary and benefits package, which is nice for the first few weeks, but then it has its drawbacks.
There's also an interesting dynamic amongst the twin daughters of Daemon and Laena. Baela's dragon hatched and has been growing, but Rhaena's egg never hatched, so she's currently dragonless. This has led to Daemon neglecting Rhaena and spending most of his time with Baela. Laena tells Rhaena that she herself didn't bond with Vhagar until she was 15. There's more than one way to bond yourself to a dragon, and if Rhaena really wants to be a dragon rider, she's gotta seize the opportunity when it comes.
On the other side of the family tree, this struggle reminds me a bit of what Aemon is going through as well. The fickle nature of the entire dragon pairing process is one of the cooler aspects to the Targaryen/Valyrian lines. Without the dragon, you almost feel like you aren't living up to who you were meant to become. Also, it's pretty sick. Like imagine at age 8 or 9 realizing you were going to get your own personal Charizard.
Daemon, meanwhile, has been clearly struggling with a sense of purpose. He spent his entire time at Pentos in the library reading about his Dragon Lord ancestors, yet he claims he doesn't care about this stuff anymore.
He isn't sticking around long, and I think Daemon's connection to his house and its history is one of the deeper parts of his character. He's got a sense that a Targaryen is a natural conqueror and striver. What he's doing now is so restrictive that it's turned him into what he is, like when one of your buddies is in a depressive rut and hasn't changed out of sweats in a minute.
Things get tragic in Pentos when Laena goes into labor, but the child won't come out. It's an exact mirror of the Queen Emma situation from episode 1, but when the Pentos Meister asks Daemon if he wants to cut Laena's belly open to free the child, he refuses. Interesting contrast to Viserys from episode 1. Laena can't take it anymore, so she takes matters into her own hands. She commands Vhagar to burn her, and even though Vhagar is confused and refuses several times at first, she finally does the deed and melts Laena with a fire blast right as Daemon comes out. R.I.P. Laena, it's now just Daemon and the twin daughters. She'll be remembered, and Vhagar no longer has a rider.
Throughout this ep, we can also tell that Daemon clearly has a liking for Laena. He actually cares for her, he feels for her, there's some empathy in his eyes, which we haven't really seen from this dude a whole lot. You gotta wonder what's gonna happen to him. You also have to take a look at where Rhaenyra is going to go next. Then some final thoughts on what Alicent might be up to. she now has the foothold that she desires if Rhaenyra clears out of the picture for a minute to remake King's Landing and what's going down in her own image. This episode was a huge inflection point for all of that.
Alright, that does it for our episode 6 recap. Appreciate everyone watching. We will catch y'all later.